Dilek Tuna, you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Ukraine and Russia hold productive first day of US-led peace talks in Abu Dhabi. Israel strikes Gaza, killing more than 20 Palestinians, including women and children. Marco Rubio hosts critical minerals meeting at US as US moves to counter China's dominance. Ukrainian and Russian negotiators on Thursday started a second day of US-brokered talks in Abu Dhabi. It comes as delegates continue to find a way to end Russia's nearly 4-year war on Ukraine. Officials from Washington and Kyiv say the discussions have been productive so far.
The first day of the second round of talks between Ukraine, Russia and the United States aimed at ending the war in Ukraine were described as productive in Abu Dhabi. US President Donald Trump sent Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to help bring the sides closer to an agreement. Despite the two sides remaining far apart on key points after several rounds of talks with US officials, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says they're committed to finding a compromise.
The good news is that for the first time in a very long time, we have technical military teams from both Ukraine and Russia meeting in a forum that we'll also be involved with, and our experts. I don't want to say talks alone are progress, but it's good that there's engagement going on. Our goal is to remain committed. We've committed a year to this. We think we've made real progress.
The head of the Ukrainian delegation, Rustem Umerov, said on social media that Kyiv's goal was to achieve a just and lasting peace. He described the negotiations as substantive and productive, adding that the talks focused on concrete steps and practical solutions. In Moscow, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Russia would not issue any statement on the outcome of the trilateral talks. He said Russia's position on Ukraine was already clear and well understood by both Kyiv and US negotiators. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky followed the talks closely from Kyiv. He posted photos of Ukraine's negotiating team ahead of the new round of meetings. In his nightly address, Zelensky said the talks must lead to real peace.
Partners must be ready to ensure this with real guarantees, security guarantees, and real pressure on the aggressor. It must also be felt now. People in Ukraine must feel that the situation is genuinely moving toward peace and the end of the war, not toward Russia using everything to its advantage and continuing attack.
These talks are due to run for 2 days. A previous meeting of the Trilateral Working Group on Security Issues was held in Abu Dhabi in January. It was the first trilateral engagement since the conflict began in February 2022.
Russia says it's pushed deeper into Ukrainian defensive lines on Wednesday, and Ukraine says it's repelled Russian attacks from multiple fronts. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about the amount of civilian lives lost.
During the last 24 hours, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have struck targets in 153 areas in Ukraine. These include military fuel and energy infrastructure, long-range drone storage and launch sites. Authorities say they had downed 139 drones and that its forces had taken control of 2 settlements in the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. In an interview with France 2 TV on Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about the losses of the war.
In Ukraine, officially, the number of soldiers killed on the battlefield, either professionals or those conscripted, is 55,000, and there is a large number of people whom Ukraine considers missing.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's authorities reported that there were 153 clashes along the front line in the past 24 hours. Ukrainian forces say they've repelled Russian assaults from multiple fronts and shot down 1,355 drones. They also say that Ukrainian missile and artillery units struck 1 Russian personnel area, 4 command posts, 1 air defence system and 9 artillery pieces.
The European Union has reached agreement on the key elements of a €90 billion loan package to support Ukraine. EU member state representatives met privately in Brussels to discuss the plan. Under the proposal, Ukraine would receive €90 billion in loans over 2026 and 2027. After discussions, the member states reached consensus on the main deals of the package. While full terms have not yet been published, the Commission said €60 billion will go forward toward Ukraine's defence needs, with the remaining €30 billion earmarked to support the country's state budget. The package now awaits approval from the European Parliament, which the Commission hopes will come quickly. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz is in Saudi Arabia on the first leg of a 3-day Gulf tour as Berlin looks to reshape its energy and foreign policy strategy. With Russia cut off as a gas supplier and concerns growing over dependence on the United States and China, the visit signals a push to secure new energy partners. Our correspondent Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, as the German Chancellor is in Riyadh as part of a 3-day tour of the Gulf region. Friedrich Merz leads a delegation that will also visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. The EU's largest energy consumer stopped importing cheap Russian gas after Moscow's invasion of Ukraine made energy dependence on Russia a strategic and political liability, forcing Berlin to cut ties and seek alternative suppliers. Merz told reporters this is a priority in light of, quote, politics increasingly being determined by major powers. The trip also marks a strategic push to reduce reliance on traditional partners such as the U.S. and China, while building new economic bridges with influential players in the Middle East. Last month, EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen hinted that the bloc was getting uncomfortable with its overwhelming dependence on American LNG that could put the EU in an unfavorable position geopolitically. The Gulf states have long been major exporters of oil and gas, and Germany is looking not only at conventional energy deals, but also deeper collaboration on future fuels like green hydrogen and broader economic investment. This aligns with developments in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and to a lesser extent, Qatar, countries that are diversifying from the traditional oil and gas business into tourism, logistics, services, tech, and, of course, AI. With respect to arms exports, Merz said Berlin would start loosening restrictions. As geopolitical tensions rise in the Middle East, Merz's mission underscores a broader shift in German foreign policy, a move toward economic pragmatism and diversification at a time when long-standing alliances are being tested and new strategic relationships are taking shape. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Israeli attacks across the Gaza Strip have killed at least 24 Palestinians. That's according to local health officials. Authorities say that several areas were hit, including Gaza City and Khan Yunis, raising fresh concerns about the stability of the ceasefire.
Israeli attacks across Gaza have killed at least 24 Palestinians since dawn, according to local health officials. Among the dead are 6 children and several women. Authorities say the strikes hit multiple areas, including Gaza City in the north and Khan Yunis in the south. Health officials say a medic was killed while trying to help wounded people. He died when a second attack hit the same location. In Khan Yunis, explosions also struck tents in Al Mawasi, an area sheltering displaced families. The Israeli military says the strikes were carried out after Palestinian fighters opened fire on Israeli troops, seriously wounding a reservist. Israel described the incident as a violation of the ceasefire and said one strike targeted a senior militant commander. The violence comes just days after the Rafah border crossing with Egypt partially reopened. However, evacuations of patients were briefly halted, leaving many waiting to cross for medical treatment. Israeli authorities say the crossing remains open, but cite security and coordination issues. Palestinian health officials say dozens of patients were unable to leave Gaza as planned. Hamas has condemned the latest attacks, warning they risk undermining the fragile ceasefire which has been in place for nearly 4 months.
The Trump administration says it will reduce the number of federal immigration agents in Minnesota by about 700. White House border czar Tom Homan said around 2,000 agents will remain in the state as immigration enforcement operations continue nationwide. The deployment in and around Minneapolis has sparked protests and legal challenges from state officials. Homan said the crackdown comes after increased cooperation from local sheriffs, while the administration insists its plan for mass deportations remain unchanged. The United States is launching a push to build a new trade bloc on critical minerals, seeking to reduce dependence on China and reshape how key materials are sourced and priced worldwide.
The US is rallying allies to form a new trade bloc for critical minerals materials vital to electric vehicles, semiconductors and advanced defense systems. Speaking at a ministerial forum at the US State Department in Washington, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the initiative aims to protect global supply chains from disruption.
We have 55 partners that we're hoping to enter into collaboration with. Many have already signed on, and the goal here is very simple. We all understand that having a reliable global supply chains in critical minerals and processed and finished materials are critical to everything we do. Today, it's heavily concentrated in the hands of one country, and that lends itself to, at worst case scenario, being used as a tool of leverage in geopolitics.
The Trump administration previously launched Project Vault, a federally backed strategic reserve of critical minerals, treating access to these materials as a national security priority. US officials say recent export restrictions and market disruptions have underscored the urgency of securing alternative supplies. Critical minerals are essential for modern technology, but most are processed and refined outside the countries where they are mined, creating supply bottlenecks. US officials say that concentration largely benefits China, which dominates global processing capacity for many critical minerals. Washington argues this gives Beijing significant economic leverage and leaves other countries exposed to export controls, price pressure and political risk.
And I think there's a growing global recognition that we need to have supply chains for critical minerals that are reliable and diverse across the world. Some countries have a number of critical minerals that they have available to them in terms of mining, but just haven't been able to do it because a foreign competitor will come in. They'll gut the price, they'll undercut it through state subsidies and unfair practices, and so it becomes economically unviable to be able to explore for critical minerals.
The proposed bloc would coordinate investment, production and pricing to keep projects economically viable. US officials say the goal is not to cut off trade, but to reduce reliance on a single dominant supplier.
The United States and Argentina have signed a framework agreement to strengthen cooperation on critical minerals. Argentina's ministry says it's to strengthen and secure supply chains. Last year, the ministry said that mining exports reached more than $6 billion. The deal comes as Washington looks to diversify its sources of critical minerals, reduce reliance on dominant global suppliers, and expand strategic economic partnerships across Latin America. China's leader Xi Jinping has raised Taiwan as the central issue in relations with the United States during a phone call with President Donald Trump, as both sides signal cautious optimism about stabilizing ties after a period of strain.
China's leader Xi Jinping called Taiwan the most important issue in China-US relations during a phone call with US President Donald Trump on Wednesday, adding that the US should approach arms sales to Taiwan with great prudence. The two sides discussed key issues including economic and trade relations, global and regional security, and sensitive matters. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that China is ready to work with US President Donald Trump to steer the giant ship of China-US relations steadily forward. President Xi reiterated China's position that core interests must be respected while calling for pragmatic cooperation in areas of shared interest, including economic stability, trade, and people-to-people exchanges. US President Donald Trump says he had an excellent phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Donald Trump posted on his social media Truth that his relationship with President Xi is an extremely good one. And as he says, we both realize how important it is to keep it that way. This optimistic development comes after a year of rocky China-US relations due to disputes over trade, technology restrictions, and competing strategic interests, leading to periodic tensions and mistrust between Beijing and Washington. Xi's remarks come as preparations continue for President Trump's upcoming visit to China, which is widely seen as a critical opportunity to build on recent exchanges and inject new momentum into bilateral relations. Analysts say the visit could help reset the direction for China-US ties in the next phase, with both sides expected to further discuss trade, strategic stability, and ways to prevent tensions from escalating, while reinforcing the message that stable China-US relations benefit not only the two countries, but the wider world. Manu Martin, A News, Beijing.
Oil prices fell on Thursday after the United States confirmed it would hold talks with Iran in Oman on Friday. Brent crude dropped around 1%, while US benchmark prices also declined in early trading. Prices had risen a day earlier amid reports the talks could collapse before US and Iranian officials confirmed the meeting would go ahead. The talks are set to take place in Muscat and will focus on Iran's nuclear program and other unresolved issues between the two sides. Now we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll examine why US-Iran nuclear talks have shifted to Oman and what Tehran's push for a bilateral format could mean for diplomacy. Stay with us.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to A News. The United States and Iran are set to hold nuclear talks in Oman on Friday after Tehran requested a change of venue, saying it wants negotiations to focus strictly on its nuclear program and to be conducted bilaterally with Washington without the involvement of other countries. The move raises questions about strategy, trust, and whether narrowing the table will make a deal easier or harder to reach. Let's bring in our guest, political analyst Anna Evans from Lisbon. Anna, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, let's begin with context. Why did Iran push to move these talks to Oman, and what does it tell us about Tehran's negotiating strategy?
Well, Dilek, it is very simple. There were talks a decade ago talks about the nuclear development of Iran by Iran, and these were technical talks that were really confined to that topic. Well, Iran sees having the new talks in Oman as a continuation of those decade ago earlier talks that were technically focused on the nuclear development issue. Whereas the US was trying to bring other issues on the table, namely problems of support to proxies in the Middle East, proxies that, as we know, Iran used to support in the Middle East, issues of maritime security that are also so important for other Arab states, and so a set of goals that would be tied with each other if the talks were to be held in Turkey according to the foreseen agenda in Turkey. And so what Iran is trying here is to confine the talks to a very technical and one-subject talks, rather than making them a geopolitical regional issue where Arab states could align with the US and bring their own goals to the table. So basically, it means reducing these talks to bilateral talks, number one, and number two, reducing the content of the talks to just one subject, the nuclear development, rather than a sequence that would include other more regional, more regionally important security subjects.
And as you said, Iran has asked for strictly bilateral talks with the US. Why might Tehran want to exclude other countries from the room, and what leverage does that give or take away?
Well, the issue is precisely that the more actors you have in the room, the more sorts of coalition making and, united fronts there can be established. So for Iran, it is not of interest at this point to have a regional alignment of Gulf states with a regional alignment of European states, for example, the UK, France, Germany. That would mean extra leverage for the US. So having more actors on the table would allow more strength to the US in the negotiations. And Iran is already in a rather vulnerable position because, as we know, the US has been stationing naval forces in the region of the Arab Gulf, and this means that the US is getting ready militarily to advance and strike if the US considers that of national interest and of the interest of its allies. So Iran knows it is at this stage in an unfavorable position, and therefore having less US allies sitting on the table means having, less leverage and less pressure, on the other side. Now, there is one very important aspect here, which is that Iran is able to use the Russia-Ukraine conflict as a bait in negotiations. And in order to do so, it is also convenient for Iran to, number one, be strategically aligned with Russia at this stage, having very intense talks to make sure they are on the page. And on the other hand, again, not having so many actors sitting on the table that would strengthen the US position, vis-a-vis Russian and Iranian interests.
So, Anna, from the US position, from Washington's perspective, does narrowing the talks to two parties simplify diplomacy, or does it remove useful pressure from allies and partners?
Well, Dilek, I think the issue here is precisely that the US wanted to include other topics in these negotiations. So this is a really important negotiation. As we know, talks between the US and Iran have been mostly, very, 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 very hard, to say the least. Iran has been Israel's number one foe in the Middle East. Iran has, as we know, sustained proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. So Iran's role in the Middle East has been really very turbulent from the US point of view. And so, of course, the United States at this stage would want to find some sort of resolution or at least a starting path to regional issues that are really important, let alone to the problems that Iran is facing domestically with the political tensions and, as we saw in very recent times, all the internal demonstrations against the regime. And so all these are issues that are of importance to the US. While reducing the bilateral meetings to one topic, can negotiations on that topic, it will compartmentalize the negotiations and make, talking about the nuclear topic easier. But on the other hand, there are so many other issues, as I said, maritime security, the missile issues, the regional proxies issues, the political authoritarian issues. There are so many of these issues will be untalked. So, of course, this will mean that whatever comes out of the negotiation table, it will be find a limited outcome. So not as general as the US would like it to be.
Okay, and as you very well said earlier, Tehran has said that they want discussions limited to its nuclear program, not the regional proxies, missiles, or even the internal unrest that's going on as we speak. Is that separation even realistic, or are those regional security concerns inevitably tied to any nuclear agreement?
Well, inevitably, they will be tied. So what we see here is one of those pillars of negotiations that are usually away from the public radar, but that are so important. When there are peace negotiations, the number and the links between the subjects that are included in the negotiation and the sequence of the subjects that are being negotiated are so important. So both the range of topics and the sequence of topics are two important pillars of negotiations, and having a specific sequence and a specific tie between topics can make all the difference, right? So obviously it is one can do technical negotiations on the nuclear issue, and that's what Iran wants, so that does not need to do concessions on the other subjects that the US wants to discuss, but the US will keep doing pressure to bring the other subjects to the table. And so inevitably, there will need to be some talks. But so far, what we see is that the US actually resisted this change of venue and this change of agenda. And the Arab countries tried to convince the US not to give up talking, but it's not very good news in terms of what one can expect, because the US wanted a different set of subjects, a different sequence, and that really matters for what can be achieved as an outcome of the negotiations.
Okay, Anna, that's all we have time for these talks. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your analysis.
Thank you, a pleasure.
And after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Stay with us.
Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etzi Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etzi Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here, that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. In Abu Dhabi, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan have jointly been awarded the Zayed Award. The prize is for advancing peace, promoting cooperation and contributing to regional stability. Let's take a look.
Your Highness Sheikh Mohammed
President Ilham Aliyev and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has been awarded with the International Zayed Award for Human Fraternity 2026 for the peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. This marks the first time the International Committee has honoured winners from the Caucasus. Both leaders mentioned the importance of the peace agreement which was signed between the two countries on August 8, 2025 in the United States. In his speech, President Aliyev said that Azerbaijan never lived in peace since it became independent, and that it is 6 months already since the historical summit in Washington hosted by US President Donald Trump. This peace continues.
I think that our example should be learned and taken as a roadmap for those who are still at war. Our example demonstrates that peace is possible despite long-lasting conflict, despite sufferings, and despite mutual untrust. Peace is possible when there is a strong political will from both sides and when this process is supported by friendly countries and by international community.
In his turn, Prime Minister Pashinyan said that the willingness of Azerbaijani and Armenian people to embrace a new future truly makes the historic moment possible, and that now it is time to focus on creating a peaceful and prosperous future for our nations.
But this ceremony is not only a celebration of the peace deal, it is also a confirmation by both Armenia and Azerbaijan that the page of the conflict is turned. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for the president of Azerbaijan or for me to come here and accept this honor. This is also an act of support by the international community because the decision was made by the judging committee with highly respectable member list from all around the world.
The Secretary-General of the Zayed Award, Mohammed Abdul Salam, said the agreement ends decades of conflict in the Caucasus and lays a strong foundation for a safer, shared future for both peoples. The International Zayed Award for Human Fraternity 2026 has been also awarded to Afghan education advocate Zaka Yaftali. The award honours people and organisations that promote peace and unity, inspired by a 2019 agreement signed by Pope Francis and Ahmed Al-Tayeb. Since its establishment, the award has honoured 19 recipients from 19 countries.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has welcomed international recognition for efforts aimed at promoting peace in the South Caucasus, congratulating the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia after they were jointly honoured with a major international award in Abu Dhabi. Our correspondent Adam Morrow has more.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has congratulated Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan for receiving this year's Sheikh Zayed Award for Human Fraternity in Abu Dhabi. Erdogan praised recent steps taken by both leaders toward establishing lasting peace in the Caucasus region, describing those efforts as extremely valuable. In a video message, Erdogan reaffirmed Turkey's support for last year's U.S.-brokered peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, saying the deal promised to open a new chapter for the region's future. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev also congratulated Aliyev and Pashinyan on receiving the prestigious award, which was presented at a ceremony held Wednesday in Abu Dhabi. Tokayev said the agreement reached last year marked a turning point in history, showing that even long-standing conflicts can be resolved through dialogue, responsibility, and restraint. He said the deal, brokered last summer by U.S. President Donald Trump, confirmed that reconciliation is not a sign of weakness, but a manifestation of strength. Congratulatory messages were also sent by the leaders of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Lebanon, and Jordan. Launched in 2019, the Sheikh Zayed Award for Human Fraternity recognizes major contributions to the promotion of peace, mutual understanding, solidarity, and coexistence among peoples and cultures. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
A US delegation has arrived in Armenia to begin preparatory work on the TRIP infrastructure project, including the development of a feasibility study. The US Embassy in Armenia said the visit is being carried out by a team from the American engineering and consulting firm AECOM, representing the US State Department's Global Infrastructure and Investment Partnership Fund. The project scope includes a technical and economic feasibility assessment and proposals for the construction of railway lines and related infrastructure. The initiative aims to support Armenia's long-term economic growth, strengthen its transport network, and promote regional integration. The Baku Military Court has delivered verdicts in a high-profile case involving 15 Armenian citizens accused of serious crimes committed during Armenia's military actions against Azerbaijan. They were accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and acts of aggression committed during Armenia's military actions against Azerbaijan. Under the verdict, Arayik Harutyunyan, Levon Natsaknyan, and David Manukyan, David Ishkanyan, and David Babayan were sentenced to life imprisonment. Arkady Gukasyan and Bako Sakyan were sentenced to 20 years in prison. Pakistan and Kazakhstan have signed more than 30 agreements across areas ranging from trade to healthcare, as Kazakhstan's president wraps up his first state visit to Pakistan in 23 years. Our correspondent Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Kazakhstan President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev arrived in Pakistan on Tuesday, landing at Nur Khan Air Base, where he was warmly received by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and President Asif Ali Zardari. During his visit, the two countries on Wednesday announced they had signed over 30 MOUs covering trade, economy, health, agriculture, climate, science and technology, artificial intelligence, rail connectivity, and media collaboration. In recognition of his efforts to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries, Tokayev was awarded Pakistan's highest civilian honor, the Nishan-e-Pakistan. Pakistan's Prime Minister, while addressing the MOU signing ceremony, said Pakistan aims to increase bilateral trade from $250 million to $1 billion within a year and will work closely with Kazakh authorities to implement the signed agreement swiftly. The leaders described the strategic partnership as a historic milestone. They discussed the Pakistan-Afghanistan-Russia-Kazakhstan transport corridor to boost regional connectivity and unveiled the commemorating plaque of Kazakhstan-Pakistan Sports Center, Dostek, aimed at promoting cooperation in sports. President Tokayev described Pakistan as a reliable and important partner in South Asia. highlighting shared values and traditions. He also expressed interest in strengthening collaboration in agriculture and medical products and urged business communities from both countries to deepen economic ties. He said that Prime Minister Sharif is expected to visit Kazakhstan later this year to further cement the partnership. Hira Mustafa, A News, Islamabad.
Uzbekistan is preparing to expand uranium production as part of a broader push to strengthen its mining and energy sectors. Our correspondent in Tashkent brings us more.
Uzbekistan plans to begin developing 4 new uranium deposits in 2026 as authorities move to increase production and expand processing capacity. Last year, the country produced about 7,000 tons of uranium, while identified reserves reached 139,000 tons, highlighting Uzbekistan's growing role in the global nuclear fuel market. New projects are expected at the Aynasay deposit in Jizakh region, as well as western Kizilkok and southern Jogildi in the Vai region, and eastern Agron in Samarkand region. Officials say increased extraction will require expanded infrastructure, including new processing facilities and a stable supply of sulfuric acid used in uranium production. A $150 million project at the Aynasay site is scheduled to launch extraction as early as July, supported by construction of more than 68 kilometers of roads and 110 kilometers of power lines. The plans come as Uzbekistan accelerates cooperation in nuclear energy and seeks to strengthen resource security while supporting long-term industrial growth. Authorities emphasize that improving efficiency and ensuring timely project implementation remain key priorities for the sector's development. It is Sivil Vajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Art and environmental advocacy come together in Azerbaijan's capital of Baku as a new international exhibition turns public sculpture into a call for conservation. The show brings global themes of coexistence, endangered wildlife and shared responsibility into the spotlight at the Heydar Aliyev Center.
Using art as a quiet alarm, a new exhibition in Baku draws attention to wildlife and environmental responsibility. The artworks examine coexistence through storytelling and contemporary public art.
On Wednesday, a major exhibition opened at the Heydar Aliyev Center in Baku. The show, The Superheroes of Wildlife, features the recurring figures Rabbit Woman and Dog Man. These characters are presented as companions who symbolize acceptance and coexistence. The creators of the exhibition, British and Australian artists Gilly and Mark, are known internationally for public artworks shown in more than 250 cities. Their practice centres on themes of equality, diversity and wildlife conservation.
I think what's really important is that when people see the wildlife sculptures, they touch the wildlife sculptures, they get up close and they form a connection. And when people connect to wildlife, they will care for wildlife and then want to protect wildlife. And we go around the world studying animals, painting animals and drawing animals. And so all the animals you see in our sculpture are from real life.
You know what, we were blown away when we were invited here. It was our dream to come and exhibit in this amazing center, the Heydar Aliyev Center. And we were just telling someone the story yesterday that 10 years ago, we used to do mock-ups of our sculpture in front of this building, except we didn't know that this building was here. And now today, the dream came true and our sculptures are in this amazing building, in this amazing country, which we are absolutely loving, aren't we, Mark?
Yes.
It's just beautiful.
Yes.
In his remarks, the director of the Heydar Aliyev Center, Anar Alakbarov, drew attention to the Caspian Sea seals and said that discussions had been held with the artists on creating a work dedicated to the conservation of this species. The exhibition, which will continue for a year, combines sculpture, painting and immersive elements. It focuses on endangered animals and the need for environmental protection. Interactive works are used to raise awareness and support conservation efforts. The project positions public art as a tool for social engagement and global responsibility.
Now we'll take a short break, and when we return we'll explore the significance of President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan receiving the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity and what it means for peace and justice in the South Caucasus. We'll see you shortly.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etty Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etty Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here, that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Welcome back to A News. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan have received the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity in recognition of their efforts toward peace in the South Caucasus. The ceremony carries major symbolic weight, but questions remain about how far it reflects real progress on the ground. To discuss, let's bring in our guest, Yashar Sadr. He's the director of Heydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies at Ibn Khaldun University, Istanbul, Turkey. Welcome to the program, Mr. Sadr.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now let's start with the award itself. Symbolically, what does the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity signify in the context of the South Caucasus peace process?
First thing is the President Ilham Aliyev and the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan received Zayed Award for Human Fraternity for their peace effort, promoting dialogue, peace, and creating regional stability in South Caucasus. So that's the reason they received this award. And this is giving this award to these two leaders is showing that international community and the friendly countries supporting their action. And so this is kind of act of support international community to creating a peaceful condition and a sustainable peace in the South Caucasus.
Okay, so you say it has, from the international community, it's an element of recognition. Do you see this award as a genuine endorsement of peace efforts, or does it risk being perceived as diplomatic, symbolic effort?
I mean, let's not forget this peace process is not ended yet because there are some disagreement, but we can say that the most important thing is to maintaining the positive momentum. So that way, the advancing Azerbaijan-Armenia normalization process through the dialogue. And as already we see that these two countries already having bilateral talks. So they don't need another third actor or the mediator. They can talk each other. The second thing is what we can see already both societies seeing practical benefit of the peace on the ground, starting bilateral trade, which is ongoing export of oil products from Azerbaijan to Armenia, permitting transiting grain and other goods from third countries through Azerbaijan territory to Armenia. So this is the opportunity, but there is a certain hurdle is still continue. One, the most important hurdle is to the Armenian need to take out some irredentist claim related Azerbaijani territory in its constitutions and the documents related to its constitution. And the second thing is political leadership have a strong political will, but this cooperation or the dialogue can continue long term, means that For example, this year there will be election in Armenia. Is the Armenian political elite having the same position as the Pashinyan has? That's the question mark. So the election and together election referendum will shape this process. The last thing is that we need to see the other actors, even though Azerbaijan and Armenia, they want to create a peaceful atmosphere, peaceful regional condition, but the role of the Russia, the condition of Iran may have impact on this process too.
Okay, Mr. Sadr, as you said, the recognition does reflect changes on the ground between Baku and Yerevan. What other specific actions by Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan does this award actually reflect? Can you point to some other measurable steps rather than intentions?
I mean, the first thing is we will need to see the election result. The second thing is Aliyev and Pashinyan already agreed to continue opportunity to expand the trade and economic cooperation and relation. And the second thing is they need to concentrate on the confidence building process measures, so that way to both sides realize that if they have this peaceful condition, then they can benefit from this action. The second thing is your news, they mentioned Trump Road. Of course, it's called the Trump Road International Peace and Prosperity. This road already the Americans negotiating with the Armenian government to start the process. So that road and the other regional connectivity projects have positive impact on the Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process. Of course, if we need to see the result of the election in June and the referendum too in the same time, if the referendum pass and the Armenian take out all irredentist claim from their official documents, then there is no real hurdle on the signing the peace treaty. So not yet, peace not signed yet. There is a progress, yes. There are some taken decisions implementing, yes. That one, for example, providing goods and the oil to Armenia, dissolving the Armenian isolation from the outside the world. So if after the June, we will see the more development, if of course the result will be a positive. Turkey will open the border with the Armenia, and the people can traveling without any restriction in that sense.
Now, external recognition often shapes negotiations behind closed doors. Do these types of awards strengthen both leaders' hands at the bargaining table, or can it set expectations that they may struggle to meet?
I mean, the first thing is these two leaders negotiating before this award. First, this award is giving a sense that international community supporting this process, international community encouraging the both leader having a strong political will and being a responsible leaders to take the steps. So that's the encouragement. The second thing is that this message is given to their public, Armenian public especially, this sense. So the Armenian government or Pashinyan government is taking certain steps is good, not only the whole process, but also for Armenian people in Armenia. So that giving the positive message to their public too.
Okay, one last question, Mr. Sadr. What message does this joint award send to other regional players, including Turkey, Russia and the EU, about the trajectory of the peace talks?
I mean, this those who watched this award ceremony and can see that different leaders or different representation of the different countries or international international organization were there. So that is showing that those friendly countries and international community supported the process. So that is the encouraging both the President Aliyev and the Prime Minister Pashinyan to take the more steps to reaching the final and lasting peace. So that that is important. I mean, if those who follow the development, I mean, the Karabakh conflict starting from the 1990s, unfortunately, international community wasn't playing positive role. That is change. That is change. This is this award ceremony is another sign that international community supporting this peace process.
Mr. Sadr, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Thanks for the analysis.
Have a nice program.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for watching.